This is Gareth Southgate, and this is the Three Lions podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Three Lions podcast. My name is Russell Osborne and this is an independent England football supporters podcast. Now this is an episode that I thought I'd like to explore some more, as it wasn't a game that I went to. I can't remember why I didn't, but I imagine money was a major factor in it. Now the game in question was Kazakhstan away, 6th of June 2009. A World Cup qualifier for the 2010 South Africa tournament. Let's be honest, it's not a place probably high on many people's destination list. But as soon as England were drawn there, all of a sudden, it became quite desirable. Especially as the Borat film, released in 2006, was fairly fresh in people's minds. It would be the furthest England would have travelled for some qualification points for any tournament. A 7,000-mile round trip, 8 hours in the air, crossing 5 time zones. England had been pulled out of Kazakhstan on the 25th of November 2007 in the draw that took place in Durban. Along with them, Ukraine, Croatia, Belarus and Andorra. England were actually drawn from Pot B, with Croatia taking the space in Pot A, Ukraine Pot C, Belarus D, Kazakhstan E and Andorra Pot F. They would all play each other in Group 6, and there was certainly going to be some miles racked up in this campaign. As a footballing nation, Kazakhstan split from the Soviet Union's federation following the breakup of the Union in 1991. It was then that they joined the Asian Football Confederation before switching and becoming UEFA's 52nd member in 2002. And it took them until 2007 to win their first ever game within UEFA, beating Serbia 2-1. Positive results have been sporadic over the years, but without wanting to stick the knife in too hard, probably their most significant result to date was a 3-0 home win over Scotland in March 2019 in a Euro 2020 qualifier. Now back to the game. This would be England's 6th in the qualification period, a campaign that saw us lose away to Ukraine, but score 34 goals in the process, also including the 4-1 and 5-1 wins, home and away, to Croatia. The game came at the end of a long season, one that saw Manchester United win the Premier League on the 16th of May, although the season later finished on the 24th, and United, they lost the Champions League final to Barcelona on the 27th of May. Only Wayne Rooney featured from United for the Kazakhstan game. Chelsea, they won the FA Cup on the 30th of May, beating Everton 2-1. So players from both those teams included in the squad were Ashley Cole, John Terry, Frank Lampard from Chelsea and Joleon Lescott from Everton. According to England Football Online, the England 18 selected for this game were Rob Green of West Ham. Glenn Johnson was at Portsmouth. He was subbed for David Beckham after 75 minutes. We mentioned Ashley Cole. He was at Chelsea. Gareth Barry at Manchester City. Matthew Upson at West Ham. John Terry, Chelsea. Theo Walcott of Arsenal. He was subbed for Sean Wright-Phillips on 46 minutes. Frank Lampard of Chelsea. Emil Heskey of Aston Villa. He was subbed for Jermaine Defoe with 10 minutes to go. Wayne Rooney, Manchester United. Steven Gerrard of Liverpool. Paul Robinson of Blackburn Rovers was a substitute goalkeeper, unused. Joleon Lescott, we mentioned him. He was unused too. Wayne Bridge of Chelsea was unused. Jermaine Defoe, mentioned him, Tottenham. Sean Wright-Phillips, Manchester City. David Beckham, he was at AC Milan at the time on loan from LA Galaxy. And Peter Crouch was at Portsmouth at the time, and again, he was unused. The goals for this game, came from Gareth Barry on 40 minutes.
Gareth Barry's there, and Gareth Barry's header has found the net. And suddenly the cloud of worry lifts from England's shoulders.
Emil Heskey on 45 minutes.
Gerrard. Oh, goalkeeper stranded. Heskey, 2. And what was Alexander Mokin playing at? Way off his line.
2-0 at half-time. Wayne Rooney on 72 minutes.
Johnson away from Kukayev for once. And Rooney, wonderful save. Still there. Rooney makes it 3. And Wayne Rooney's England hot streak continues.
And then Frank Lampard with a penalty on 77 minutes.
On we play. Good save. And Heskey goes down again, and this time it is a penalty. 7 days ago, in the plush surroundings of Wembley, Frank Lampard won the FA Cup for Chelsea. 7 days on, 3,500 miles away, he confirms England's victory in Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan, for this game, were managed by German Bernd Stork, and all his players were home-based, playing for the Kazakh clubs from the Kazakhstan Premier League. And as I like to do when researching particular games, is pick up a copy of the match programme, on the off chance I can get some more additional information. Not this one, however. Only one section was in English, the rest in Kazakh Cyrillic script. But the part in English says, "The football founders have arrived for the match with our nationals in the optimum possible lineup. It means that Kazakhstan football in England and Europe is considered to be really battle-worthy." I think maybe perhaps something lost in the translation there, but I think we get the drift that they were pleased and privileged to be entertaining and welcoming England. Now that's enough of the backstory. Time to have a chat with someone who took the trip out there. Previously, I spoke with Les Gasson about his trip to Italy for the European Championships of 1980, which went really well with listeners out there. And I've invited Les back. Les, 2009. Not as far to cast your mind back this time.
No, well, actually, short-term memory is worse. I remember more about Italia 80 than I do about Kazakhstan. So I did do a little bit of research on through some photographs yesterday just to twig some memories.
Yeah, you sent me one of you up in the mountains, was it?
Yeah, that was the mountain trip, that Mark Perryman organised, on a couple of coaches. And but we only did half the trip because we got a bit bored with looking at mountains. But
Start at the beginning. When Kazakhstan came out the draw, did you think, right, yeah, I'm going there?
Oh, fabulous. Yeah, when these odd countries come up, if that's the right phrase, it's everybody's dream to sort of like, how are we going to get there? So, you're straight on to contacting people. What are you doing? How are you getting there? You're getting onto flights, obviously, straight away before they start going silly. So, yeah, I tend to, as soon as the dates come out, I tend to book within 24 hours, if not less. But I didn't know anybody who wanted to go, I know locally or whatever. So I just contacted, I booked my flight straight away anyway. Yes, it wasn't too bad. I can't remember the airline. I've probably got the ticket somewhere stashed away, but I can't remember the airline. But yeah, it wasn't too bad. And the price, I don't like to be ripped off totally, but you get a figure in your head, I think, about what you're prepared to pay.
Yeah.
And I think that can change in your mind as well as it gets closer. If you think it was too expensive to start with, and then you think, I should have booked earlier because it's now gone up or whatever. But some people are quite clever. There's some people that like to do the let the keyboard tappers get on there quick. And it goes up in price, and then they hold fire.
Yeah.
And some of them do quite well, I think, with the last minute flights. But I don't like to do that. I like to know I'm booked and going. I think we may have gone via Turkey.
Oh, right.
I think it may have been Turkish Airlines, and they were quite good. I had friends from Hastings. Well, people I know from Hastings. They did a road trip.
No.
And and they went through. They wanted to visit a few of the stans before they got to Kazakhstan, and that's a chap you really want to talk to from Hastings. He's I mean, the stories they come up with are absolutely brilliant. The things he used to organise for trips far outweigh what I've ever done. It's just brilliant, absolutely wonderful. I wish I used to go with him, really.
Right.
But no, the flights weren't too bad. It's just when we arrived, I think it was about 2.5 to 3 hours to get through passport control. And the chap I contacted, a friend of mine, was a Warren Cummins. He comes from Lancaster, Preston North End fan. We met in Moscow a couple of years before for the first time, and we stayed in touch. So he said he wanted to go, so we arranged to meet over there. So I booked a hotel for the two of us. He arrived about an hour and a half before me, and he was still in the queue when we arrived. So we actually saw each other at passport control.
I bet they've never seen so many English people in one go turn up.
It was quite packed. I mean, it wasn't a massive place, but it was very packed, and it was getting a bit hot. And it was just the excitement of being there. I think, and hoping, getting out there and getting into what the place is like, I think got you through it. But and the banter, of course.
So what was it? Did you go into Almaty?
Almaty, yeah.
Which is is that the capital?
It was, and they changed the capital to the one inland. The one away from the mountains.
Right.
I forget the name of the place now. They changed the capital, but they kept the game in Almaty. So, which was a godsend, really. It's a much nicer place. Is it Astana?
Astana, isn't it? Yeah, the capital.
Yeah, Astana. That's right. Yeah, I knew it'd come back. Yeah, it was a purposely built capital, I believe.
Okay. So, how long in advance were you there before the game?
2 days.
Right.
Yeah, so we normally like to do at least 3 to 4 nights when we go away, so we can get to see the place and do a few things. The build up to the match, because once the match is over, everybody just wants to get home, really. Yeah. But the build up, I like to be there for a couple of days.
I mean, if you're going to take that long a time to get there, you don't just want to fly in, fly out, do you? Not for that one.
No. I can never understand that. As the old phrase goes, I mean, the football is normally the worst 90 minutes of most trips. Once in a while we get a good one, don't we? Like Munich and things like that. But a lot of the time we had a very barren period of dreadful football and results. But we like to make a bit of a trip of it. Either a 3 to 4 day lads trip, or if I do take my wife, like I do sometimes now, then we like to try and make a mini holiday if we go into nice places, like Malta, like we've done recently. So that's what we like to do.
So those 2 days prior to the game in Kazakhstan, what did you get up to? What was it like? What was the reaction of the locals to you all?
Well, it's quite surreal, really, because we didn't know what to expect. It was very more Eastern European, with the big, wide open, grid-like streets everywhere. And as you do, once you get settled into your hotel, the first thing you go looking for is a bar.
Yeah.
So we decided to walk towards the ground to find out where the ground was in relation to the hotel as regards, distance and everything, and then and just drop off in a few bars along the way. But we found one, and then we thought we're going to find another one. We walked for about an hour, couldn't find anything. And as we got towards the ground, there was a group of lads coming the other way, and they shouted across the street, "There's no point in going up there. There's no bars."
They're doing the same thing.
And as you do with England trips, you meet up, you have a chat, and again, we've been sort of like friends ever since, really, on and off through football. A group of lads from Gillingham,
right? A
bloke called Dave Raby and his mates. They were the ones with the World Cup. They take the World Cup with them everywhere.
The trophy.
In the photograph.
Yes,
that's their World Cup. Yeah, it's not mine, so I don't claim to that. But it's they take that everywhere with them. They're a great bunch of lads. So we joined up looking for a bar, really, on that first day. And it was quite an eye-opener because it took us about another half an hour, I think, to find one. We noticed some umbrellas across the street and thought, that's got to be a bar.
Yeah.
And when we got there, it was great. It was outdoors. It was hot and sunny. And there was just us, really, and this group of Russians. And so we sat there, had a few beers together, locking up a tab. And we got chatting with these Russian lads who were, or people that were sort of like quite intrigued by us. And they started putting music on the jukebox or whatever, and they wanted us to sing along with them to Queen songs and everything.
Oh, right.
So it was quite surreal. But we was with them for a while, and and then lo and behold, about an hour later, another group of lads we knew from Doncaster turned up. I don't know if you ever heard of the Doncaster lads. From the Stag pub, which is no longer, I think, in Doncaster.
Right.
There's a chap, he's quite notorious, great chap, ex-army. We call it Donny, it's Bisto. I don't know what his first name is, but he's a bit notorious. Put it this way, when Bisto's in town.
Gotcha.
The first time I met him was in Albania, and should we say, we knew intimately what Bisto was like. And when we was in Bratislava on that wet, infamous match, we was in a bar, and there's a bit of a commotion at the door. And someone come in and says, the security aren't letting these lads in because one of them's just streaked across the road, done a handstand. We said, oh, well, Bisto's in town then. So that's Bisto. And so
need to get Bisto on for a chat.
Oh, crikey, you'd never get him off. He's fantastic. He's the ultimate entertainment. He really is good. So, yeah, if you could ever get in touch with him from Doncaster, right. He's a great chap, wonderful chap. But they turned up and joined in. So we was all rocking up a tab. We all said, we'll keep it going. And these Russian chaps started getting all these plates of food out, and meat and chicken and pork and all this sort of stuff. And then they got a bottle of vodka out, and they was handing that around. And then one of them offered up a vodka drinking contest.
Oh dear!
And they said, "Well, put somebody up for it." Well, there's only one contestant there, and that's Bisto. You won't beat Bisto. He done him good and proper on the vodka drinking contest. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant. And this went on for about 3.5 hours to 4 hours. We was there rocking up a tab. All his food was coming out. And I just said to one of the Gillingham lads, I said, I was getting, it was all well gone, really. And I said, I think we ought to tab up and get off before they rip us off or something. We don't know what's going on here. They reckon they were Russian mafia, they started saying. So when people say they're mafia, they're obviously not. But we thought, we could be on a rip-off here. So anyway, we went to call for the tab and to go and leave, shaking hands and everything. And the staff said, no, it's all paid for.
Really?
The Russian lads paid for everything. There must have been about 9 or 10 of us there at least, drinking for 3.5, 4 hours and all that food as well.
Yeah.
And the vodka, and they paid for the whole lot. So they may not have been mafia, but they obviously had a few bob.
Well, I was going to say, was it cheap out there, or?
Oh yeah, it wasn't expensive. I can't remember exactly. It wasn't. It was much cheaper than being at home. Yeah. But you're still talking about 10 lads at least.
Yeah. Drinking
for 4 hours, vodka and food as well, beer. That's quite a few. That's quite a few drinks. That's quite a tab.
Well, there you go. People say
fair play to them. They were good people.
Good people. Stuff.
Yeah. So that was the first day.
You woke up with a heavy head the next day?
Well, funny thing is I never do, because I don't drink to excess, because I don't really drink things like shots and shorts and things unless I'm with a certain group of lads. But then you're wearing it off normally. If you drunk what we drank that day and just sat there, I think we'd all been sick as dogs. But I think because what was going on and you're on a football trip with lads, you tend to wear it off.
Yeah.
So it's not so bad. So I don't get hangovers really like that now. We got collared by some locals after we left that bar. It was getting dark, and they offered us to go out and drinks and that, and which is what we did. They took us to. They took me and Warren to an Azerbaijani outdoor disco and live barbecue thing. But this was something else. It was all outdoors. There was live bands, karaoke, disco music. It was chock-a-block with youngsters mainly, and then all down one side was all these like barbecue areas and ovens where they were doing pizzas, and they were chopping up, looked like a side of a cow, just chopping it all up and chucking it on the barbecues. And so that was great. And it was a fantastic evening. They really looked after us. We did get quite drunk that night, but there was because I'm a bit of a glass collector from around the world as well, and I've got my pride and joy from there. It was a fantastic jug glass with a handle, and the handle was like a man's arm, like that.
Okay,
muscly arm,
strongman arm.
So I thought I've got to have that.
Yeah.
But I was only wearing a polo shirt, and I thought, well, I just shoved it up my t-shirt, up my polo shirt to walk out.
Oh, right. This wasn't something you can buy. You had it away.
No, I had it away. I just thought, I can't go home without this. So anyway, I was with these. We was with these locals. Me and was walking out, and the security stopped us, and he pointed at my belly. Oh, I'm in trouble. So we let the locals sort of explain, and I thought I was in trouble here, and they took the glass off me. And I was explaining that I'd buy it if I have to. I don't mind. Sorry, I was trying to steal it.
Yeah. And
they told us to stay there. And it was on the radio, and this chap come down in a shirt and tie, and they explained what was going on. I thought, well, they're going to call the police. What are they going to do, And they said, wait there. And this chap went off with my glass. He'd come back, and he'd filled it up. He filled it up with beer. And I said, what do I do now? And the local chap, the person said, you must drink it. If you drink it, you can have the glass. I thought, this is a bit of a double whammy, this, isn't it? I get a glass and I get a free beer on top. But it was a bit tricky because I'd had enough by then, really. But so yeah, that was a bit of a silly little story, but that was all right.
Good stuff.
Yeah, they whisked us off then to a nightclub with 80s music. So that was great fun. Went in there. This Dutch chap came over. Are you English? Yeah, English football fans coming over for the game. He says, wait there. He come back with a bottle of vodka and put it on the table and said, help yourself. So that was Kazakhstan. We had more vodka in Kazakhstan, I think, we ever did in Russia, actually.
Right.
In the World Cup. So, but then, that was the trip the next day, I suppose. We got up the mountains.
So what?
There was a bit of a sad part to the trip, though. A couple of chaps we know or knew got turned over, got in a dodgy taxi and got taken out to some wasteland, got turned over quite badly.
Oh, really?
Which wasn't good. So everybody was told, just don't get into unmarked taxis. So it's a bit tricky. So that was a bit of a sad moment. But
so about going up into the mountains, you said about meeting a wedding party, was it?
Yeah. We thought, we do the touristy bit. I mean, Mark Perriman, obviously know of Mark Perriman. Mm. He organised the trip on the coach. It was quite a nice little trip up. We went up the first mountains where they got the stadium there for like a Winter Olympics or Winter Games.
Yeah.
We're going up the mountain. We stopped about halfway for a little break, and this stretch limo turned up, white limo.
As they do up the mountains.
Yeah, and these people got out all dressed in what obviously was local attire, but it was a wedding, and they spotted us, England football fans, and they waved us over. They wanted us to be in the photographs, the wedding photographs. So that was quite funny. So we had a couple of photographs taken, shook hands, said hello, said, congratulations and all that sort of stuff. And we went to walk away, and he said, oh, no, wait. And he went to the car, come out. What did he come out with? A bottle of vodka. Gave us a bottle of vodka. So we had to carry this bottle of vodka all the way up to the top of this mountain thing. Up these must have been about 10,000 steps, I think. Wow. It was every time you thought you got to the top, you got to another level, then you saw another set of steps. Right. You couldn't see the next set of steps until you got to the top of the first set of steps. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And there must have been about, I don't know, I'm just guessing, a dozen of these.
Wow.
To get to the top. So that was quite hard work. Some people didn't make it at all. It was that hard to get up there. But there you go. But yeah, so we had a few vodkas to keep us going on the way up. But then the next part of the trip was to go to another mountain, and me and Woz decided that we didn't want to do that because we was meeting up with these locals again to take us out again. So we decided to give it a miss and try and hitch a lift back down into town. So we spotted this bar where the coach was parked, and we had a beer there. And by chance, there was a chap in a car across the way. We asked him for a lift and he didn't really understand us. So we had another beer and this Russian chap sat down with us. He sort of spoke quite a bit good English. And he said, you need a lift? I said, yeah. He says, I'll get you a taxi. I'll get you a car. And he went over to the chap and come back and said, yeah, we've got a lift back into town. So brilliant. And he said, I'm an England fan. I said, Russian? Yeah. He said, yeah, he got out his England members card.
Really?
He's an England member. He's been an England member, travel member for quite a few years. Goes everywhere. And we've seen him around, actually, funny enough, on future trips. I think he's quite well known now.
That's a new one on me. Oh, right.
Yeah, he's Russian. Yeah, so he's always around. So yeah, that was that day before the game.
So I mean, the game. I mean, you said at the beginning, is always usually the low point of a trip. I mean, from what I can remember, the game didn't start particularly well anyway, did it?
No, I mean, they all become a blur. To tell you the truth, a lot of the games. No, we got the result we needed, so that was okay. The atmosphere was great. There was no issues, no problems. The place was really friendly. I mean, the police were really friendly as well. They let us have photographs taken with them and all that sort of stuff. Them big silly hats they wear.
Yeah, I've seen those. Massive.
They're massive. I've got a great photograph actually of my mate was sat with them, sat amongst them.
Yeah,
and it's come out really clear. It's a cracking picture. But that was all good stuff. It was as a trip, going into the unknown, into a place you never dream of going to, really, unless you're some sort of explorer, I suppose. It is a wonderful thing to do. Places like that in Azerbaijan, but Kazakhstan, I felt, was better than Azerbaijan.
Right.
I thought Kazakhstan was really nice. The weather was great. The people were really nice. We did try to get scammed on the street. We did get warned about scammers on the streets. And we was walking along towards this market on the day after the game before we flew home. And this chap come running across the pavement and he picked up this big wad of notes all rolled up with elastic band. And it was all American dollars. And he said, I've just found this. He says, I don't know what to do with it. And should we share it? And all that sort of, what? What's going on? And he wanted us to go round a corner and in this alleyway place. And he said, if you've got any American dollars in your wallet, we can swap them over. We can do what? Get out of it, mate. Yeah. So then, suddenly these other two chaps come around the corner. It's like, yeah, great. So we just legged it, really. Told him to go away. Yeah, so as a trip, it was great. It was friendly. The weather was great. We met some more new good friends that we've stayed friends with. The people were friendly, helpful. It was quite cheap. Got a result. So all in all, I'd say it was a good 8 out of 10. I would say Kazakhstan, a good 8 out of 10.
Okay, we've heard from Les Gasson there. Someone else who went on to the same destination, to Kazakhstan, was Dean Cornish. Yeah, I've welcomed Dean back to the podcast. Hi, Dean.
Hi, Russell. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah,
Kazakhstan, eh?
Yes. Well, yeah. It was one of those that as soon as the ball came out of the hat, as it were, in the draw for the World Cup qualifiers of 2010. It was one of those trips that you just had to do. I was quite fortunate at the time that I was doing all the trips, actually, because I didn't have a wife or a family back then. So I think I did all of the trips for that 2010 qualification period under Capello. And yeah, in Kazakhstan for me it was the standout one. Still now, whatever we are now, 12 years on, it's probably one of my favourite trips I've done, actually, over probably 40 odd that I've done watching England away. It was great.
Wow. I think it's an 8-hour journey over there.
Yeah, we did. We actually went via Riga. Okay. So I went on a trip with the Old England Fans Travel, which was a company that was set up by a guy called Simon Oliver and Sarah Oliver from Oxford United fans. And they used to do a lot of trips back in the day. So I booked up with them. I think it was about 650 or 700 quid, which was quite a good value. And it was a 5-night trip because obviously Kazakhstan, you wouldn't want to be doing a day trip out there. So it was. I thought I'll treat it as my summer holiday. It was in June, and there were a few other guys who I knew who were going on the trip. And yeah, it was brilliant. There was about 70 people on this trip, and a few people sort of knew each other from whether it was the Old England Fans Forum or just obviously from other trips. Over the years, you know how it is. Mm. So so we went to Riga. The first that was the first stop, and we actually had a night in Riga. And I remember in the afternoon, there was probably half the people went off just to the pub and had an afternoon, drinking around Riga. And then the other half went off shooting. There was a shooting trip organised in the countryside where you could go off and, to be honest, I don't know what they were shooting, but I remember my mate Lars went and he said it was fantastic. They were shooting, these big guns that I guess you certainly wouldn't be able to in the UK. Yeah, and then there was the usual, as you can imagine in Eastern Europe, the usual sort of strip clubs and whatever in Riga that night, and it was a great night. Everyone really enjoyed it. And then the next morning, we flew probably the extra 6 hours, I guess, onto Almaty. Obviously from Riga, so it's 2 hours out to Riga or whatever it is, and then an extra 6 hours from there. And it was amazing. When you first arrived, you realised how far away from home you were. I mean, this is a European qualifier, as in the UEFA section of the World Cup qualifiers. And as soon as you're landing, you see these massive mountains, and the other side of those mountains was China. You're only 150 miles from China in Almaty, and you see the snow on the top of these mountains, and just bizarre, really.
Had you done any sort of investigating as to what Kazakhstan, Almaty would be like before you got there?
I think I'd probably had a look online, on Wikipedia or WikiTravel or whatever. But I suppose I think I knew that it wasn't going to be like the Borat films, because obviously Borat had been, a big film over the previous few years. And I think I'd read somewhere that, that was completely not like Kazakhstan at all. And actually, as soon as you landed, you realise it wasn't like that, because the people, for starters, didn't look anything like Borat. That was, I think, Borat had them looking sort of quite, Eastern European, sort of, Albanian looking, I guess. But actually, the people in Kazakhstan looked almost Chinese, or sort of Mongolian, or I don't quite know how to explain it. But the people looked different to what you'd expect. And also, it wasn't a horrible place. You also think from having watched the Borat films that, people are going to be living in sheds and whatever else. But it wasn't like that at all. There's actually a lot of money there through oil and I think through banking as well. So, I knew that it wasn't going to be quite like the Borat films, but I wasn't quite prepared as to how nice in places it was.
Okay.
It was really swanky. The town centre, you go into a sort of cafe or a bar thing, and it actually felt quite opulent. Like the people looked really rich. But I think it's a land of, like a lot of these places, a land of divides. There's obviously a lot of rich people, but then there's a lot of poor people outside of the cities. And you didn't have to go too far off the beaten track to find rougher parts of the city, put it that way. But certainly the town centre was, you could see gold awnings, gold pillars. It was very opulent and very, really nice, actually, really, really interesting.
Okay. So how far in advance were you there before the game?
I guess we probably landed 2 days before the game. So we did a bit of sightseeing in the city centre, obviously frequented the bars, which were strange. They weren't like, bars you'd expect. Obviously, it wasn't like there was a town square like you might get in, sort of Western Europe, where everyone sort of could congregate. There were, bars were few and far between, really. And there wasn't really, a single area where you thought everyone would meet up for a drink. Apart from actually the hotel where we stayed, it was called the Hotel Kazakhstan. And there was actually an English pub in the lobby there called the Guns and Roses, which was quite bizarre. And I guess a few people drank in there. But we tried to get out on the first day, had a walk around the town centre, and we had to walk up to the ground and had a look at there were some statues just outside. And then I think we had to pick up our tickets as well from the usual sort of swanky FA hotel. And I remember bumping into Trevor Brooking.
Okay.
I had a brief chat with him, and also Henry Winter as well, the Times journalist. So just had a walk around those first couple of days. There was obviously match day, which I'll talk about in a minute. But the day after the game, we actually went up a mountain. I know you were mentioning that there was a trip, or some England fans went up to some ski jump area, and actually we're up in the mountains with the snow. But I didn't personally do that trip, but I went up I suppose rather than a mountain, it was more of a big hill called the Koktobi Mountain, which I've looked up earlier on. I wouldn't have been able to remember it myself. But basically, that was just an area of recreation for people in Almaty, because the city was very, very hot, especially in June.
Yeah.
And this mountain is just 1,000 meters above sea level. You get a cable car up there, and up there's a big like Ferris wheel. There was like a weird sort of go-kart thing that took you down the mountain, and it was the place where all the Kazakhstanis seemed to go for their, I think it was the Sunday, so they were all out there for their daily weekend walk, doing some sort of going on fairground rides and whatever else. It was an amazing atmosphere, actually, and I remember thinking that every Kazakhstani who saw us, it was almost like they were intrigued by us. We were like the sort of the visiting circus in some ways, but it was great up that mountain. I say it really felt like a great atmosphere, and you could spot England fans and journalists and commentators, because I think everyone on this Sunday decided what else is there to do, and I think probably every tourist information guide recommended going up this hill.
Right. So I saw the highlights of the game. As Les said, it's always the letdown of a trip, despite a 4-0 result. But what do you remember about that?
Yeah, well, it's funny actually, because I had a look on YouTube earlier on. I couldn't remember any of the goals. And, actually some of the goals were pretty decent. There was Wayne Rooney's overhead kick. There was Gerrard had like a long speculative effort, which was sort of parried by the keeper, and Heskey finished it off. And then Gareth Barry got the first inning quite late on, actually. When I was reading, it looked like Kazakhstan had the better of the first, certainly opening exchanges. They should have gone 1-0 up, apparently. Yeah. But if I'm honest, I don't remember the game, and that wasn't necessarily out of being drunk. It was just out of the fact that it was 12 years ago, and an away game in Kazakhstan. It wasn't sort of highest on the sporting agenda for me. But I remember it was a decent enough atmosphere. It was very much an open ground, as you can imagine, out that way. But the locals were so excited. It wasn't like I don't remember it being like somewhere like Russia or maybe Serbia, where you'd have like a sort of quite a fervent atmosphere and singing from the opposition fans. It was more like, they were just excited, like an Indian cricket ground. When you sort of watching the cricket recently, something happens and there's just like, just excitedness. That's how it felt to me. It didn't feel in any way like, there wasn't a rough atmosphere at all, in spite of there being about 1 million police, around us all. It didn't feel rough in any way. And it was one of those games where, in the end, it was easy because we won 4-0, but we struggled at the start, as often you do against lesser opposition. But I don't ever remember feeling stressed about the result, because I think we'd won our previous 5 games and we had Andorra to come in a few days, and it was pretty obvious we were going to qualify for South Africa anyway. So it wasn't like one of those games where you're walking into the ground and you're really worrying about what the score is going to be. It was one of those where you just think, oh, I'll go and enjoy it, and then soon enough it'll be over and we can go back to the bar.
You say about an excitable atmosphere. I don't know if you saw it on YouTube or whether you remember it. I saw one of the Kazakhstan supporters, or one of the locals, ran on the pitch and got tangled up in the net. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I don't remember it, but I did read that earlier on, actually. But no, I don't really remember it. I mean, I remember the fact that there were a load of England flags, and they'd allowed us to put them all out on the running track. I actually weirdly remember the fact that I had the chance to get my flag. I've got a big Stamford flag. Yeah. There was like a sort of big, almost like a goalpost. It was on the other side of the athletics track. So it would have been almost next to the corner flag. I got close to it. This is maybe, 20 minutes before kickoff. And I was putting my flag up and it felt fine. And I was walking away. And then I think maybe a steward pulled it down in the end and gave it back to me. But I remember thinking, this is going to be a great place for my flag. It's literally right next to the corner flag. But no, I don't remember much about the game particularly, I have to say, apart from the fact there were a lot of policemen. It felt like there were more England fans in our end than there probably should have been. I don't know how many ticketless fans travelled, but yeah, it wasn't the sort of game where I was worried about any kind of trouble. It was just, everyone was in Kazakhstan for a bit of an extended summer holiday. Spirits were high, and it was just good fun.
One of those ones that you can say, I was there, tick it off.
Yeah, I think so. And it was, the day of the game was amazing actually as well. I remember we were looking for some atmosphere, as you do. We were walking around various bars, and I think, as I said earlier on, there wasn't like one obvious area where everyone was going to be drinking. But we found a couple of bars on the way to the ground, and it was, there were probably 30 or 40 England fans in each of the bars, and it was all right. It was good. It was just, there were nice open air bars. And then someone sent me a message and said they were in a bar called the Circus Bar. And they must have sent the location, or I don't know if there was even location services back then, or maybe they just obviously gave us directions. And we went off this sort of, off the beaten track, I guess, and ended up in this place called Circus Bar. I don't know why it was called Circus Bar, because there were no signs around this bar at all. It felt like someone's front room, to be honest. And beers there were 50p a bottle.
Really?
And it was what you'd expect. If you'd never known anything about Kazakhstan, it was what you'd expect Kazakhstan to be like. Because inside, it was pretty grim. And the toilet, I've got a photograph of the toilet. I've never seen anything like it. It was like the one out of Train Spotting, or worse, to be honest. It was grim. Flies everywhere. And yeah, we ended up just sitting outside this bar for a couple of hours, and more England fans joined us. I think the sort of word got round that this was weirdly the place to be. And the beer was fine, it was cheap. And I think the locals started coming around and looking at us as well. Maybe the bar owners phoned their mates and said, "Come, we've got a load of England fans here," and they all came around and were sort of eyeing us up. Not in a troublesome way, just completely bemused as to why a load of football fans from England would be descending upon their pretty average bar. And I also remember the food that they were serving up, because I was hungry, and I asked them if they had any food, and they gave me the menu, and literally there was, it wasn't in English at all. It was just in Kazakh, as you might expect. I guess it was Cyrillic writing, I think. So I couldn't understand anything, and I just picked something, and it came out. And honestly, Russell, I'm not normally fussy, but I couldn't eat it. I literally didn't know what it was. It was like a sort of spaghetti bolognese, but a very strange version of one. And
you didn't dare,
I felt rude, to be honest, but I couldn't eat it. But I also remember that bar. That was something that was quite funny. Was one of the bemused locals who was walking past. He had a horse with him. And it wasn't, I think,
I've seen this picture. Go on.
Yes, you might have done. Yeah, it was basically it was just it wasn't a stray horse. It was obviously his horse, but he was just stood watching us, and I just said, "Can I get on it?" And he was like, "Yeah, fine, yeah." So he sort of helped me on it, and I sat on this horse. And no.
Couple of beers.
Donkey at Blackpool, maybe when I was younger, but that was it. Yeah, I do remember that I got off the horse, and my hands smelt for about a week afterwards. Like, honestly, it was just the smell of that horse. And also on that trip, I got bitten on my foot. It was weird, actually. My feet had a terrible time on this holiday, but my feet got bitten, and it ended up really becoming quite an open wound, actually. And I didn't get it properly checked out, but I remember on the plane on the way home, someone saw it because I was wearing flip-flops. And they're like, "You need to get that checked out." There was like this sort of big, sort of 6-inch open gash with looked like flies flying around it. And luckily, it was all right in the end. But I remember thinking, like, I hope I haven't caught something off this scacky horse. But yeah, it was all right in the end. But yeah, no, it was a funny trip. It was. I also remember going to one bar probably the night before the game, and the bar tried to rip us off on a bottle of vodka. I think someone ordered a vodka and tonic, and rather than bringing out a vodka and tonic, they brought out a bottle of their most expensive vodka, put it on the table, opened it, and tried to charge us sort of 40 quid for it or whatever, which was, way above the going rate of what you'd normally pay. And there was a bit of an argument about it, but in the end, we just paid it. We thought rather than cause any hassle. Yeah, exactly. We paid it. But I also remember that I took off my my trainers. I was wearing a pair of Adidas trainers, and I took them off for whatever reason. Maybe my feet were hot or sweaty after a day walking around. And there was a Scouse guy next to me, a guy called Graham Morrison, and he'd obviously had a bit too much of this vodka, and he was just sick. And I remember him thinking, "Geez, Graham, you've been sick everywhere." Looked down, and literally both my shoes were just full of this Scouser's sick. I can't remember what I did with them. I might have just left them there, to be honest.
And then went for the flip-flops.
Yeah, well, exactly. Oh. Yeah. But it was the other things I remember in terms of bars were the day of the game. As I mentioned, there weren't that many obvious bars to go. But after this circus bar, someone else recommended a HSBC party going on.
As in the bank?
Yeah, literally the back. I think it probably can't have been far away from the ground. So it was on the sort of main thoroughfare to the ground. That there was like I don't actually know if it was a HSBC bank, whether they had the bank downstairs and then like a function room upstairs. But it was very obviously HSBC people there. I remember people talking about it afterwards. And people just started walking in, and you could just pick up a drink, and no one seemed to mind us being there. But it was obviously their like corporate afternoon or corporate, entertaining their clients or whatever it was. But suddenly there was about 30 England fans all in there drinking their free beer. And there was one guy who was outside beckoning everyone in, who some England fans listening to the pod might know him, called Jeff York. And he's been following England for a number of years. And I think he'd got beaten up by a taxi driver, I think the night before, and he'd spent the night in hospital. So he had like a lot of cuts and bruises over him, and they'd put some, I think, iodine on him to mend the wounds. So he looked a right state because he had the iodine green bits, like, look like bruising and then cuts and everything. And he was just standing outside this bar drinking their free beer, beckoning England fans in. And I'm not sure if HSBC did any corporate deals that day, but I'd be very surprised if they did, with Jeff York beckoning in half of England's support. That was funny. It was good fun. It was a good trip, and one I'll always look back on, with fond memories.
Oh, I bet. Is there any other nation that you think that would come close to going to somewhere like that you haven't been to yet?
Well, let's think. Somewhere similar. I mean, obviously places around there like Kyrgyzstan. And actually, that's something else I should mention. I don't know if Les mentioned this, but the other thing, there were some England fans went to Kazakhstan via Kyrgyzstan. So Tashkent, I think, is the capital of Kyrgyzstan. And one England fan got shot. And
really?
It was on the news. It was on the news. I remember it being on Sky Sports News as well. And, obviously your family starts sending you messages saying, have you heard an England fan's been shot? And, I suppose back home, it sounds like, it must be, oh my God, what are they doing in Kazakhstan? There's England fans getting shot. I mean, I never felt in any moment really like we had any danger out there. But yeah, there was an England fan shot in Kyrgyzstan. And I guess, it's those sorts of trips that are the most interesting, aren't they? Places you'd never go.
Hearing these stories about Kazakhstan makes me wish that, yes, I would have loved to have gone. So it's great to hear these stories from you, like yourself and Les. So thank you very much.
No problem, Russell. Anytime.
Cheers. Thank you to both Dean Cornish and Les Gasson there for sharing their memories of what seems to have been a fantastic trip. 4 days later, England were at home in a 6-0 win against Andorra, and we would go on to finish top of the group and qualify for the South African 2010 World Cup. With 27 points, 9 wins, and just that one defeat to Ukraine. Kazakhstan finished second bottom with just 2 wins, both over Andorra. And since then, they found themselves in the average position of 128th in the FIFA rankings. Although they were up to the dizzy heights of 98 back in 2016. And as of the end of 2020, as a nation, they had played 209 games, winning 50, drawing 49, and losing 110. Will we draw Kazakhstan again? Undoubtedly, I'm sure we will. Will I go? I'd like to think so. But I'd imagine, as a country, it would have developed a lot since 2009. Those that experienced it back then all say it was a real treat. Now, in these COVID days when we are unable to travel, I hope it's brought back a few memories. Or for those that are yet to experience an England away day, perhaps it's whetted your appetite for when we can. Thank you for listening. My name is Russell Osborne, and this has been the Three Lions Podcast, an independent England supporters podcast. I hope you can join me for more in the run-up to this year's European Championships, or you can tune into previous ones at threelionspodcast.com. If you are on social media, you can find the show there on the likes of Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Just search Three Lions Podcast. A follow, a share or a review on the likes of iTunes will always go down well. Thank you very much for your continued support. So until the next time, take care, stay safe, stay positive. Cheers.